Rick Pizzo, thrilled to be joined by Trey Demps on. Yes, it is Suits and Sneakers Week. Watch all week long. Your favorite coaches will be wearing their sneakers along with their suits to support the American Cancer Society, the fight against cancer, and all the fundraising. Obviously a great cause in arguably the best conference in the country. And once again, this weekend left us wondering when we will ever figure out what's going to happen in this league.
I have no idea what's going on. I just gave up. I mean, at certain points, I feel like, okay, this team is going to step up and be the team to beat, to be the second team next to Purdue. And then they go on a losing streak. And then it's the next team that I believe in, Iowa, and then they lose. So it's just, you just don't have a feel for where this conference is going. But I love it. I love the parity. I think it's great for the league. I think it's great for college basketball.
One thing we've all figured out, Purdue's really good.
Yes.
They know how to win basketball games. 4 wins already this season by 3 points or less. You could look at that as a negative. I look at it as a positive as we look at the big story and your weekend results. Ohio State had lost 5 in a row. They bounced back to beat an Iowa team that had won 4 in a row. Penn State takes care of business against Nebraska. Nittany Lions keeping their NCAA tournament hopes alive. And then on the Sunday triple-header schedule, Michigan in a defensive battle. Ugly game, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And Juwan Howard thought that 60-56 score was gorgeous. Purdue holds off Maryland. Give Kevin Willard's team a lot of credit. They had a chance to get run out of the gym in the first half, came back to make it a game. And what else can you say about what Trayce Jackson-Davis has done? 66 points, 24 rebounds in the last 2 games for Indiana, both important wins for the Hoosiers. They were in a bad way. Now they're suddenly back in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. Let's start with the nation's highest-ranked team inside the Big Ten, the Purdue Boilermakers. You could make the argument one of 2 ways. Purdue almost lost to Maryland, almost lost to Nebraska, or you could make the argument that nobody can really figure out Purdue on either end. Defensively, they're terrific, and offensively, there's just no matchup for Zach Edey.
Yeah, 24 and 16. He really carried this Purdue Boilermakers team. But I think you got to give Maryland a lot of credit for the way that they played. They came out with a good game plan. They kind of started out in that zone, and then sometimes they would go to a man-to-man after maybe the first 3 passes, but then sometimes they would stick to the zone. It was kind of just a call basis, and I thought that was a great game plan by Kevin Willard because I think it really disrupted the flow of Purdue's half-court offense. Purdue's backcourt shot a combined 3 from 12 from the field. This has been one of the best backcourts in the conference. So I really liked what Kevin Willard did. I really liked the way that they played. They did a good job of making the guards feel uncomfortable. I thought they ran good stuff in the offensive end. But at the end of the day, I think if you're Maryland, there's 2 biggest things. It's controlling the glass and making 3-point shots. If you can't do those 2 things on the road, I think it really makes it difficult to win. And I think those 2 things kind of correlate and go hand in hand because if you're able to control the glass and get some defensive rebounds, Maryland only had 17 defensive rebounds. You're able to get the ball out and then get out in transition. I think that's where Maryland is at their best when they get the ball out in transition. So I think those 2 things are correlated with one another.
You bring up an interesting point because Maryland went to that zone and they kind of said, Zach Edey, if you're going to get yours, you're going to get yours.
Right.
We're not going to let Fletcher Lawyer, Ethan Morton, the rest of those guys that can shoot from the outside beat us. Nebraska went the exact opposite way. They packed in 3 or 4 sometimes on Zach Edey. Both were effective to a point. Neither led to a win. If you're a head coach and a head coach of a team that knows how to play both man and zone, which way are you going against Purdue on any given night?
What I'm doing is I'm picking 2 guys or 1 guy on the floor, and I'm just letting them shoot the whole game. Just because how good Zach Edey is and then how good Fletcher Lawyer is, Braden Smith, those guys are pretty good shooters as well. So I know that I don't want Zach Edey, for me at least, to get 25 and 16. I don't want Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer to be able to knock down open perimeter shots and feel comfortable on the offensive end. So I'm making Ethan Morton shoot 10 threes. I'm making David Jenkins shoot 8 threes. That is my game plan. I'm going to leave those guys wide open. That's how I would cover them. But I thought Maryland did a good job of, they stuck to their game plan. They let Zach Edey kind of eat down low, and then they took away everybody on the perimeter. So I thought it was a good game plan overall.
Before we close on Purdue, I will say this. We're now taking for granted the fact that they're 19-1.
Yep.
They're off to the best start in program history. Remember, before the year started, there were all sorts of questions about who's going to be the point guard? Is Braden Smith really any good? How much has Zach Edey developed? Let's give credit where credit is due, because I think this team has already exceeded expectations of what we believed, at least in the preseason. They've just changed those expectations so much over the course of the last 2 months.
Yeah, and you mentioned those two guys, but what I've been really impressed with is the other guys willing to sacrifice and kind of take a back seat to the freshman guards, right? David Jenkins is a 2,000-point scorer, right? Ethan Morton was, the player of the year in Pennsylvania. I mean, talk about the job that he did on Jameer Young yesterday. Jameer Young started the game 0 of 8 from the field. And then as soon as Ethan Morton went out of the game, Jameer Young got his first field goal. So, I mean, you talk about his importance and willing to sacrifice himself on the defensive end. Brandon Newman comes in and is ready to knock down perimeter shots in limited minutes sometimes. So you talk about all the pieces that they have. It could be a different guy every night. So this Purdue team is willing to sacrifice for one another. They're willing to let the freshmen kind of be the lead group in terms of, being kind of the stars and kind of getting most of the credit on the perimeter. So that's what I think is what makes up a great team.
And team, I think that's the key word. Nobody cares. You could tell.
Yeah.
Zach Edey doesn't care. Fletcher Lawyer doesn't care. Braden Smith doesn't care. Nobody cares who gets the credit as long as they win. And that goes back to the man at the top, Matt Painter, once again doing a not just Big Ten Coach of the Year, but National Coach of the Year quality job. He will certainly be in the conversation for both those awards at the end of the season. We wondered about Trayce Jackson-Davis and what awards he could potentially be up for at the beginning of the year. Then he struggled a little. Indiana struggled. Indiana got injured. They lost Xavier Johnson. They lost Race Thompson. Suddenly, the last 2 games, both Indiana wins. Trayce Jackson-Davis hasn't just been a monster, 66 and 24 on the floor, but he's changed his attitude. I mean, he looks mean. He looks nasty. He has that kind of dog, as our friend Rafael Davis likes to say. And he's looking at the rest of his teammates and he's saying, get on my back. I'm going to take us to the NCAA tournament. I love that about Trayce Jackson-Davis right now. Yeah,
I mean, this is a team that was struggling, and you need that senior leadership. And I think the biggest thing, too, is that he's demanding the basketball.
Yep.
He's getting a touch every single time down the floor. And I like the fact that Mike Woodson, he kind of went back and forth between whether he's going to go to a 4-out, 1-in offense versus a 3-out, 2-in offense. He's kind of gone back to what's made them good and their traditional offense is that 3-out, 2-in. They run those simple floppy sets and just get the ball inside and let your big fella eat. And I think Trayce Jackson-Davis is doing a really good job of taking his time, reading double teams, kind of changing pace when he's in the low block area. I thought Michigan State, I was a little bit weary of their game plan a little bit just because they were just kind of stunting, and I thought it just left everything open. But Trayce Jackson-Davis did a good job of kind of using deception, taking his time in the paint and then kind of getting over to that right shoulder, his key shot. So I think that overall, this Indiana team, they're getting it done on the defensive end. They're pressuring teams. They're making teams feel uncomfortable. They're doing a good job of forcing teams to take tough twos in the paint. Over the last 3 games in this winning streak, teams are shooting 40% from the 2-point line, and they're taking away the 3-point line since they gave up 18 threes to Penn State. So I think it's just been a team effort, but it starts with your senior leadership.
They also need, like every other team in this league, you need the complementary pieces around your superstar to play well. And with Johnson out, now Race Thompson is back, but clearly not at 100%. It can't all fall on Jalen Hood-Schifino. He's going to be a terrific player, going to be one of the best players in this league if he decides to stick around for a while. But when you have contributions like they got against Michigan State from a Trey Galloway, that's key to me for Indiana, because TJD can do this, but he can't go for 66 and 24 in every 2-game span. So you need Galloway, you need Tamar Bates, you need guys who have been up and down, I think, to consistently give you, they don't have to give you the 17 that Bates gave you, but give me a dozen every night, and then TJD will take care of the rest.
Yeah, you got to be a 3-and-D guy at the end of the day, because, like I said, Mike Woodson is going to make sure that TJD gets a touch on every possession. So you got to be able to play off of him, be able to find the open spots, get yourself open, and be ready to knock down those perimeter shots. And that's what those guys did. I mean, Trey Galloway knocked down all 3 of his threes. Tamar Bates was 5 of 6 from 3. So you got to get in the gym, work on that, know where your shots are going to be coming out of the post, and then you got to buy in on the defensive end. This was the team that, since Mike Woodson has taken over the program, has kind of held their hat on the defensive end. And when they were losing games, I mean, they were giving up, I think, 87 points per game over that 3-game losing streak. So I think that has kind of been the key for this team, is getting back to their identity, those perimeter guys being able to knock down open shots and letting TJ be dominant on the
and having some fun. You got to love it when the old school coach starts cutting it up in the locker room. The players absolutely love it. As for Michigan State, one of the most enigmatic teams, in my opinion, in this league. They go on that nice 7-game stretch. Then they kind of hit the skids. They looked really good at times against Indiana. They looked at other times like they didn't want to guard anybody. What do you make of Michigan State and the makeup of this team as it is right now?
Well, I think what's different about this Michigan State team is they're outmatched physically almost at every position without Malik Hall. And that's kind of something that they're not used to being, right? When you look at their guards, they have smaller guards on the perimeter. I mean, Joey Hauser is playing at an ultimately high level, but, you know, he's not the most physical guy in the paint. And Mady Sissoko is still kind of figuring out what it takes. And then you got Jackson Kohler as well, who's a freshman. So when you look at this team, a lot of times they get kind of controlled. They don't win the battle of the paint. And then sometimes, too, I think their offense can get a little bit too isolated on the perimeter where the ball kind of sticks with Tyson Walker or A.J. Hoggard. Yesterday, I think they only had 6 assists on the game. So I think those are two things that they can improve upon. And I think, you know, they have to be opportunistic and get out transition. I mean, this year, they're one of the lowest ranked tempo teams in the country. Which is crazy to think about, right? So I think they have to be a little bit more opportunistic and getting out in transition, getting some easy ones as well.
Because Walker can go, A.J. Hoggard can go. Now, Walker wasn't 100% on Sunday, dealing with some flu-like symptoms. But I'm with you. I like this team when they play at a little bit faster pace. Obviously, you don't want to give up 82 as they did to Indiana. You're not going to win a lot of those. Right. But after that big streak, Michigan State has now lost 3 of 4. The Spartans, outside of the top 25, wondering what they have to do to make themselves comfortable. Comfortable. Right now, they're in the tournament for sure, but make yourself comfortable over the last couple of weeks so you don't have to go into a situation where you can't afford to lose games or you feel like you absolutely have to win games.
Right.
Now, Ohio State was in a situation where they had to win some games starting this week and had lost 5 in a row. You're taking on an Iowa team that had won 4 in a row. You figure all the momentum is with the Hawkeyes. That Ohio State offense hadn't really been clicking like it had earlier in the year. Bryce Sensabaugh was kind of doing stuff by himself, wondering when he was going to get help from Thornton and Key and the rest of those guys. And, of course, Ohio State goes and drops 93 on Iowa. It seems like what they did yesterday is exactly, at least offensively, what Chris Holtmann wanted this team to do all year long.
I mean, give Chris Holtmann a ton of credit. He made a bold move in not starting Suing and Sean McNeil. I mean, that is those are your 2 senior leaders. And, you know, after a 5-game losing skid, you kind of have to make a shift. And I like the guys that he did insert into the starting lineup, Gale Jr. and Isaac Likely. I think those 2 guys give you a little bit more athleticism, can be able to push the pace a little bit more. Because in that all-access game, I think we learned a lot about Chris Holtmann and how he wants to see this team play. He wants to see them play with more tempo, more pace, getting up and down the court, letting their athletes kind of go and get buckets in transition situations. And yesterday they had 20 transition points. And I thought Isaac Likely was kind of the key. He had 18 points, 7 assists, 10 rebounds. He was kind of the catalyst when Iowa was pressing, kind of mixing up defense, kind of getting the paint, creating for guys, getting Bryce Sensabaugh some open shots, creating for himself. And I think, you know, going to Iowa, I think the biggest thing and the biggest challenge that they have is guarding perimeter players. They have a hard time keeping other perimeter players out of the paint. I mean, yesterday Ohio State had 50 paint points, but a lot of those were off dribble penetration. They weren't post-ups. There were guys kind of just attacking blow-bys or guards posting up, smaller guards for Iowa and kind of getting those easy baskets. So that's something that they have to shore up, maybe double team when teams try to kind of post some of their smaller guards, get a little bit more help side, because I think teams right now are living in the paint on the perimeter.
And I think part of the issue becomes if you're an Iowa defender out there on the perimeter, you can't release a guy into the lane because while Philip Rebrache is a really nice, versatile player, he's not a dominant big in terms of his defensive ability to block shots or change shots at the rim. That's just not what he does. They don't really have that at Iowa right now, and I think they're dealing with that on the defensive end. I still think both of these teams, and I know they've had struggles at different times, Iowa with that terrible non-conference loss, and they lost 4 in a row, and Ohio State, of course, had lost 5 in a row. I still think both these teams are really dangerous in a one-game win and go home situation like we'll see here in Chicago at the Big Ten tournament in early March.
Yeah, because both of these teams have stars, right? I mean, whenever you have
and good coaches, really good
coaches that run good stuff and good sets and put their stars in positions to be successful. I mean, you talk about Chris Murray, he can go get you 25 on a given night. I mean, it felt almost kind of like an off game for him, and he still had 22 points. I mean, Bryce Sensabaugh is a phenomenal.
He's just a walking bucket.
Just a walking bucket. I mean, he can score in the mid-range. He can hit you with 3-pointers. You know, he can get you in the post and get that turnaround jump shot. He can get to the basket. There's nothing that he can't do on the offensive end. So I think whenever you have that, and then you have other guys that can come off the bench and be able to knock down perimeter shots. A guy like Sean McNeil or a guy like, Dix from Iowa that can come in and knock down 3 threes. When you have guys around them that can make perimeter shots, it makes you a dangerous team in March.
How about this freshman class and 3 guys we just talked about? Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Bryce Sensabaugh, all are going to be in the running for National Freshman of the Year. Now,
Yes.
Brandon Miller of Alabama maybe has the lead right now because he's probably in the running for National Player of the Year as well. But all 3 of those guys will certainly be part of that conversation. First time Michigan played Minnesota this year, Wolverines scored 90 points. Impressive offensively. Second time around, just 60. The good news, both are dubs. Hunter Dickinson, nice game, 23-9, as Michigan does, in fact, pick up the W at home. This is one of those games, and you hate to say that a must-win game is on the schedule in January, but based on what had happened to Michigan in the non-conference, based on what had happened to them overall to this point in the season, at home against a Minnesota team where a loss would have been a quad 4 loss, I don't think it is outside the realm of truth to say that was a had-to-have game for the Wolverines.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been an uphill battle to make the NCAA tournament had they lost that game. And it looked like it. I mean, the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game, I mean, they were down 10 points, really struggling offensively. Minnesota was picking them apart on the offensive end. But I thought this game really changed when Dawson Garcia picked up that second foul. I thought Dawson Garcia, up to that point, did a really good job on Hunter Dickinson, but as soon as he picked up that second foul, and Pharrell Payne is going to be a great player. I really do believe that.
Gonna be is the key phrase there.
Gonna be, yeah. I mean, he's physical, he's strong. He has a lot of tools, I think, that are going to show eventually. Just not yet. And Hunter Dickinson just kind of had his way against him in the post, and that's kind of what was the catalyst in getting the Michigan offense going. And, from there, I thought Minnesota kind of struggled to gain a rhythm offensively with Dawson Garcia out of the game. Because with Minnesota, what they've been successful is when they put Dawson Garcia at the 5 and kind of let him play point center, where he can be able to attack slower bigs, he can make passes, he could be a screener, pick and pop guy.
Step out, knock down threes.
Yep. And then Cooper, I think, had 16 field goal attempts, which I think they're at their best when Cooper is a passer and being more of a distributor. I thought Michigan did a good job of kind of forcing that, just the way that they game planned. They kind of sat in that drop coverage in pick and roll situations and let Cooper kind of take those mid-range shots. I mean, he made 6 of them, but he also missed 10 of them as well. So I thought that was a good game plan. I think you got to give Kobe Buffkin a ton of credit because he was great defensively on him and other guards as well. And so I thought they did it on the defensive end, especially without Jet Howard, going down with the ankle injury. So you got to give them a lot of credit because you got to find a way to win. There's always games like this in the Big Ten.
So let me follow up with you on that because Jet Howard was in a ton of pain. We knew he wasn't coming back in the second half. You could see that when he left the floor. Now the question becomes, what if this is any type of lengthy absence? Let's say he misses 2 or more games.
Yeah.
What does Michigan become offensively? How can they adjust for not just his effectiveness, but the volume that he creates on the offensive end?
Well, 3-point shooting. You look at the numbers yesterday, 2 of 14 from 3. Doug McDaniel had 2 of those 3. So only one player yesterday knocked down a 3-point jump shot. And so I think what happens then is that teams now can really dive in on Hunter Dickinson and really kind of sell out, and then you let those other guys make perimeter shots. But I think one player to keep an eye on that I think could be a little bit more effective and get more opportunity if Jet Howard is out a little bit more is Joey Baker. He's a guy that's been pretty efficient in the time that he's gotten, kind of struggled on the defensive end, which I think is why his minutes have decreased over the course of the year. But I think he can be a guy that can kind of step in and knock down some perimeter shots. He can do some things off the dribble as well. He's a talented player. So I think that could be a guy that could really insert himself in the lineup and make a difference.
I think Juwan Howard also talks to Terrence Williams and tells him, listen, we need you to be more solid, more consistent, but we also need you to be more aggressive in terms of your offense and become a scorer if Jet Howard is out for any length of time. Penn State picks up a win against Nebraska. Again, one of those games you kind of have to have, but I really like this Penn State team. I think if Andrew Funk, and he doesn't have to score 23 every game, but if Andrew Funk shoots the ball well and it allows Jalen Pickett to do what Jalen Pickett can do, and then you have those pieces with Lundy and Dredd on the outside, and Lundy can slice into the middle as well, I think this becomes a really nasty team because they're going to play defense against you and they are going to guard you for 40 minutes. And at the end of the day, you've seen a lot of teams play against Penn State look just worn out. Even teams that are winning after 37, 38 minutes are like, looking up at the clock as if, can this game just get over? That's what Penn State and Micah Shrewsbury do to you.
And the thing, too, is what's kind of funny is, like, you kind of almost have to prepare for Penn State like you do against Indiana or Michigan with TJD and Hunter Dickinson, because Jalen Pickett's ability to play on the block and play in the post and kind of just wear you out, as you just mentioned. And I think what Nebraska has done really well this year and why they made it a game in the first half was they really packed the paint, and they did a good job of doubling and making Jalen Pickett uncomfortable. And Nebraska kind of plays this funky defense where it almost looks like a zone. You know, they're point switching, but they do it effectively. And, you know, Jalen Pickett had 4 turnovers in the first half. They kind of took him away. But I thought Shrewsbury in this game made a great adjustment, is kind of putting him in the center of the court at the free throw line in that elbow area and letting him operate from there, just because Nebraska's not able to double as quickly. And Jalen Pickett kind of got some finishes, and then he was able to kind of spray the ball out, and guys were able to knock down perimeter shots. And I thought Penn State did a really good job of not settling in the second half. They shot 23 point attempts in the first half. I thought they did a good job of attacking closeouts and getting some easy twos in that second half.
But that's what I love about Jalen Pickett. Only had 12, and he did struggle a little with his offense, but he goes for 13 rebounds and 5 assists. Overall, Jalen Pickett this year, this is a great stat. He's averaging 17 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists.
Wow.
In all of college basketball, since the start of the 2001 season, you know how many other players have averaged that in the course of a year? 1.
Wow.
One other player from the Big Ten. Any guesses? Michigan State?
Nah.
I went Draymond Green, but it was actually Denzel Valentine was the only other guy since 01-02 to average 17, 7, and 7. And I got a feeling Jalen Pickett's going to keep on that pace for the rest of the year, because Penn State absolutely needs it.
Absolutely.
Now, Penn State may not be in the race right now for the Big Ten title at 4-4, but they are in that monster logjam. You look at Wisconsin at 4-3, all the way down to Iowa at 4-4. That is 7 teams that are all either even or 1 game above 500. Now, granted, Purdue at 8-1 has a 2-game lead over Rutgers and Michigan. It is a 2.5-game lead, I should say. It's virtually 1.5 over Rutgers right now, because, of course, Rutgers did beat Purdue earlier this year. But this race for not the 1 spot, but the race for the 2, 3, and 4 spot, the other 3 double byes in the Big Ten tournament, there's no doubt it's going to come down to the last weekend of the season.
For sure. And you know what I think, too, because I think we're starting to see the stars are starting to become stars. Hunter Dickinson's starting to play at a high level. TJD's playing at a high level. You know, Zach Edey, obviously, maybe he's not in this conversation, but I think it's going to come down to the complementary pieces. I think it's going to come down to the third, fourth, fifth options. It's going to come down to the Connor Seasons, the Jaden Akins, right, the Andre Hyatts of the world, kind of those guys that, you know, offensively that have shown throughout the course of the year that they can be effective and they can knock down shots. I think it's going to come down to who at that position from 3 to 5, you know, in terms of their options, can really be effective on the offensive end.
January 23rd through the 29th is American Cancer Society Coaches versus Cancer Suits and Sneakers Week. While you're watching the games, you'll see your favorite coaches across the nation suiting up and wearing sneakers to promote the American Cancer Society's vision to end cancer as we know it. To learn more about Coaches versus Cancer and how early detection can save lives, visit coaches.cancer.org. It is time for today's big interview. We are thrilled to be joined by the CEO of the American Cancer Society, Dr. Karen Knudsen. First, Dr. Knudsen, we appreciate the time. I know this is a very busy week among a year of busy weeks for you and everyone at the American Cancer Society, so we appreciate you taking a few moments.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Knudsen, let's start at the beginning. What exactly is the genesis of Suits and Sneakers Week? How did this come about?
So this simply came about through alignment. The coaches, like the American Cancer Society, care very much about the health of the coaches themselves, the players, the fans, and their families. So this is an alignment of us coming together toward the goal of ensuring that every person in this country understands cancer screening and takes action on behalf of their own health.
What sort of feedback have you gotten directly from some of these coaches who, like many of us, have been directly impacted by cancer?
Unfortunately, we are in the case that 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women over their lifetime will experience a cancer diagnosis. So unfortunately, cancer affects all of us. The coaches have been delighted to learn more and to share that knowledge with their players, fans, and with the communities. So we've engaged with them this year in something that you just talked about, a Set the Screen campaign, to encourage everyone to learn more about the screening plans that are right for them, given their age, their family history, their genetics, if they know it, so that cancer can be caught earlier when treatment is more effective.
I think, Dr. Knudsen, there is probably a big space between how impacted everyone is by cancer and those not directly impacted themselves with the actual knowledge of what they can do to make sure that they protect themselves in the future. What steps can people take if they have family history, if there is any concern, but perhaps they are not feeling ill or feeling like they're having any symptoms themselves?
Something so important to know is what you just touched on. Cancer screening is for people without symptoms. So should be just your general good health strategy. You know, of course, if you don't feel well, something doesn't feel right, a visit to your physician is in order. But cancer screening is for everyone. So it is the case that learning more about this is where the American Cancer Society comes on. So if you visit coaches.cancer.org, you'll find information about cancer screening, even by age group, what to think about when you're age 25 to 39, 40 to 49, ages 50 and above, and who may be at higher risk for cancer. All of that you can find on our website. We also have a 24/7 chat line or hotline that you can use, 1-800-227-2345. And at that chat line and online, you can learn about the importance of cancer screening, what may be the most important for you. And we'd also provide information through our live chats and online to help navigate you to a location near you where cancer screening is conducted.
Such a genius alliance with college basketball, with sports in general, because sports are such a huge part of our culture and probably make a larger audience aware of the message that you are trying to send. How important is that alliance, not just with college basketball, but with all sporting leagues that are making sure that their viewers are aware of what they can do in our aim to end cancer and to fund cancer research?
Yeah, absolutely. We very much value our relationship with, across the sports teams and across the sports community. We have that same goal in mind, health. And for the NCAA coaches to have that visible sign of awareness, wearing their sneakers during Suits and Sneakers Week is a way that we're inviting fans and participants to lace up their own, shoes and join us and join that team toward setting the screen against cancer.
Dr. Knudsen, I imagine that there have been some emotional responses from some of the coaches involved. Here in the Big Ten, we know Fran McCaffrey at Iowa, his son dealt with cancer in his young age. What sort of emotional responses have you and the American Cancer Society received from whether it be coaches or others that are involved in this cause?
It has really been an outpouring of support toward this common cause because cancer quite literally affects almost every family. Yet we are in an era where there's much more hope than ever before. We know early detection is key to improve outcomes, so screening is part of that. But if someone has to go through a cancer journey, such as Coach McCaffrey's family, as you spoke of, ensuring that there are information available for families so that they can get to the right therapy, understand that therapy, and then also be prepared for cancer survivorship. So helping the coaches, families, the fans, and players throughout the entirety of that cancer journey is what we aim for as part of our mission to improve lives.
This, of course, is just 1 week in a year-round aim at the American Cancer Society to make everyone's life who has been impacted by cancer a little bit better. What else takes place over the course of the year, Dr. Knudsen, in this aim and as you continue to try to raise money to fund cancer research?
So cancer research is important. We know that there are new breakthroughs that are happening at the level of early detection, even using AI for mammography to more effectively determine who has a concerning image that may portend the rise of a future breast cancer. So funding cancer research is incredibly important, but also ensuring that we're educating the public and having access to those breakthroughs. So we do work with health systems across the country to ensure that they are educating their communities and providing the optimal screening care as related to the kinds of cancers that we know arise in those communities. So it truly is a nonstop journey for us throughout the year to ensure that we are both funding the breakthroughs, but enhancing access to those in every community across the country.
Dr. Knudsen, I can tell you from a personal standpoint, my mother, about a year and a half ago in May of 2021, was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer that had metastasized. And her doctors were very honest, said a decade and a half ago, this is a couple of months. You probably don't make it till the end of the year. She's still with us now. She's seen the birth of a 3rd grandchild. Last year, she was alive to celebrate the renewal of vows with my father after 50 years of marriage. And I imagine that for you and for everyone at the American Cancer Society, it's stories like that, because there are thousands of them around this country, that keep you going when you're working late at night and when the scientists and the doctors are doing all the research that goes into making all these new medicines and breakthroughs possible.
That's absolutely right. You know, we've seen a 33% reduction in overall cancer mortality since 1991, where there was a high watermark for cancer death rates in this country. And it's due to research and due to, stories that you just related to us are thankfully ones that we're hearing, where breakthroughs are allowing people to make cancer less of a burden on families and individuals. So it gives us the impetus to continue to double down, to partner to ensure that we accelerate the pace of those breakthroughs and accelerate the time that those breakthroughs become meaningful as regards to cancer prevention and cancer eradication.
Dr. Knudsen, before I let you go, a minute for you to share anything that we didn't touch on or any message that you would like all those folks that are watching their favorite teams and seeing their coaches wearing the sneakers and realizing what this week is all about.
Yeah, so let's make this successful. Our goal, if we had a magic wand, is to have everyone in the U.S. when they go to the physician at their next local family doctor visit, to ask, what is the right screening plan for me? And the time to start having that discussion is at the time that you hit adulthood. So not too early to start having that important plan for your own health in the future. And I also just want to say in closing how much we appreciate the partnership with the coaches to raise awareness for this important step for everyone to raise up their own health.
Dr. Karen Knudsen, CEO of the American Cancer Society. We will not do a more important or impactful interview, I guarantee you, throughout the course of the year here on the Big Ten Network. Dr. Knudsen, we truly appreciate the time. Of course, we wish you and everyone at the American Cancer Society the best in everything that you are doing for this world.
Thank you. Coaches.cancer.org.